Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I'm here with my husband, Jeremy.
Hello.
And our son, Remy.
Hi, everybody.
And he is here today. We're going to talk to him about being on the spectrum. Remy, as you know, he has his own podcast, Racing with Remy, and he was on our second episode of Caregiver Chronicles, where we talked about his diagnosis of autism.
Yes, and I was also on one later on, when a story time of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so go check those out.
Yes.
And also go check out my Racing with Remy work on YouTube.
Yes, definitely check out Racing with Remy on YouTube if you want to hear more Remy. He's a very sweet boy, and he is on the autism spectrum. He tends to be in the area of the spectrum where he needs less support, but still needs pretty significant amounts of support, especially this year with the pandemic and everything. And he wanted to take some time to talk about what it's like being on the spectrum, what it's like growing up with a sibling who needs extensive support on the spectrum, and just from his perspective, what Jeremy's life is like and what it's like for him, what everything's like for him. So, Jeremy, tell us about your experience since being diagnosed with autism. How has it changed you?
It's changed me in somewhat significant ways. Like, it's brought down some of the better aspects of my personality, as well as some of the worst aspects of my personality. Like, no one's perfect, so basically what I'm saying there is I'm not perfect, and basically what I'm saying there is I do some bad things. Everyone does some bad things, but as long as you're able to do mostly good things, you are going to be written down as a good person.
Yes. So how has it brought you down, though? How has being diagnosed with autism brought you down?
It's brought me down in some ways to where it affected me badly in some areas of time, but like in some situations, but in other situations I was just able to just stay calm and move on forward.
Do you think some of those situations that it brought you down in were things that you were already struggling in, and now you just have a name for why, or a reason why you're struggling with it?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to talk more about that a little bit? What was something that was hard for you before you got diagnosed with autism that you later realized might be something that you struggle with because of that diagnosis?
Something that I do is that I get extremely upset when I don't get my way. At first, I just thought it was because of something that I haven't figured out why. But then later, after my diagnosis, I thought maybe it's because of the autism.
Yeah.
Of course, I was diagnosed with other stuff later, like ODD, anxiety, and ADHD, but I'm talking about autism for this episode.
Yes, we're going to stick to that one. Why?
Because this is Autism Month.
It's Autism Acceptance Month.
Acceptance Month and Awareness Month. Yes. They're both important.
Yes.
Yes. Is there anything about your diagnosis that frightens you?
Not really, no. I think most of the stuff that get me scared is more of the anxiety part.
Yeah.
That get me so scared to where I can't sleep at night, so yeah.
Yeah. And when you first got diagnosed, were you frightened?
When I first got diagnosed with it, I was frightened, but then when I got diagnosed with anxiety later on and my mom told me that, then I realized maybe I was frightened not because I have the autism, but because of the anxiety.
Yeah. Now, what is something that you do to separate which thing it is that's getting you at that time? Like, Like, not all of your rigidity. Do you know what that word means? You're always wanting your way. Not all of that is autism. Some of it is part of being on the spectrum. That is a characteristic of a person
Yeah.
on the spectrum, right?
Yep.
And what is something that makes you know that this is my rigidity from my autism, or this is because I'm afraid to do something different because of my anxiety?
What makes me notice that is because of how I am thinking things. So basically, if my thoughts are like, I don't want to do this because I don't think it's going to taste good, that one's anxiety. But autism's like I don't want to do this because I don't want to do this. That's just the autism in me, and autism because I'm not getting my way at that moment.
Yeah. But have you learned to or what are you doing to work on that? So sometimes when you have to do something, it's something you don't want to do. How do you deal with that?
How do I deal with that? Sometimes I deal with it fine, other times I put up a fight, so I can't tell you which one I normally get. It's like 50-50 chance. Half of the time I'll put up a fight, half of the time I'll just go with it.
Yeah. And that's something that you're working on as you get bigger,
Yeah.
right? That's a skill that you're
Yeah.
working on. Is learning how to be, what's
Yep.
the magic word we've used before? It starts with an F. Learning how to be where you can bend in all different ways.
Flexible.
Yes. As he stretches and flexes when we say that.
Buddy, is there anything about your diagnosis that you think benefits you?
Not really too much about it, other than the fact that I have other than the fact that I was a little bit of a late talker, which we'll probably cover that in another episode, and that I have an amazing IQ, like 125 or something.
You are a very smart boy. Do you think that maybe your really good memory is one of the characteristics you have, that's in line with being on the spectrum?
Not exactly, no, because my dad, I think I got that more from my dad than from me being on the spectrum.
That's okay.
Because my dad has a great memory.
Yeah. What about your mom? Does mom have a great memory?
You have a good memory, but there's sometimes where you forget stuff 5 minutes after doing it, and other times where you can remember stuff that were like 2 years ago in a snap.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want people to know about being on the spectrum?
Not too much, no. Just mostly what I want people to know is that everyone on the spectrum is different. Even a lot of people who look like they're the same on the spectrum, they are different in some way of how the spectrum affects them. Even if it's just one minor touch from someone else that's barely noticeable or might not even be noticeable at all, they are different from someone else on the spectrum.
Yeah.
No two people on the spectrum are exactly the same in how it affects them.
I think you're right on that, buddy. But I don't know because I'm not there, but I think you might be right. If you could not have autism, would you, or would you stay being autistic?
I'd stay being autistic because it's something that just makes me. And there's something that's a little controversial about them eradicating it that I do not want, because because it makes me feel like, all right, we need to get these people treated instantly as though I have some sort of disease or I'm crazy or something.
Yeah. What about
Yeah.
anxiety? What if you could get rid of your anxiety?
Well, if I could get rid of my anxiety, I'd rather just work on some coping mechanisms.
You wouldn't want to just get rid of anxiety?
I wouldn't want to just get rid of it because, yet again, it's part of what makes me me. And if they end up getting a cure and try to eradicate that, that'll make me feel like, hey, you need to be fixed or something, as though I have some sort of disease or I'm like crazy or stuff like that. So none of those.
Yeah.
Not really.
So what's the best part about having autism?
The best part about having autism is the fact that it's part of something
Keep going.
that is pretty
It's okay if you don't know. We can cut it out. It's okay.
I think the best part about me having autism is that I am able to find so many interests and segments of interests and segments of the segment of the interest in just one thing.
That could be pretty cool. I can imagine that would be pretty cool. So I'm going to ask you another question, Rem. Do you prefer, when we're talking about you, I usually call you Remy or Goober,
Yeah.
right? So if, or by your name, or if you're in trouble, I use your first and middle name.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you are being referred to as someone on the spectrum, do you prefer to be called an autistic person or a person with autism?
I prefer to be called a person with autism.
Yeah.
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 All right.
It's not that I have anything against either one. It's just one I feel like makes it, because I want the person to be first, because an autistic person makes me feel kind of like I'm more autistic than I am human sometimes when people say that.
Okay.
All
You
right.
have the right to feel that way. And
Yeah.
that's how mommy and daddy will refer to you, a person with autism. So when you hear us use that language on this podcast, it's because that's our son's preference, and that's what we're going to stick with as his parents.
Yes. One other question here now. Joey, your brother, has far more extensive needs for support from where he's at on the spectrum compared to you. What's it like being the older sibling of a child that needs more support?
It sometimes makes me jealous because sometimes I feel like he's getting all the attention, and I get jealous whenever I feel like someone's getting all the attention, and I feel like I'm left out sometimes when someone else is getting all the attention.
Yeah. Do you think kids who are not on the spectrum feel that way about siblings sometimes?
Sometimes, but not as often as if you're on the spectrum and you have a sibling on a worse end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Now, there's some talk about the terms high functioning and low functioning. You would be considered higher functioning because you're very intelligent and you can do a lot of things that other people like your brother can't do. You do math at a 7th grade level and you're in the 4th grade. You're reading at grade level, and academically in school you do great. People don't notice it's not obvious that you're on autism, that you have autism when we talk to you. Versus your brother. If people look at your brother for 2 minutes and can tell he's different. Your brother is in kindergarten and he's still in diapers. Your brother is in kindergarten and he still doesn't speak. Your brother can't count yet. How How do you feel about those terms, high functioning or low functioning? Do you think those are good terms to describe where somebody is on the spectrum? Or do you think that we should maybe find better language for that?
I think we should maybe find better language for that, but the problem is I'm not exactly sure what type of language it is because it also sometimes it might be obvious if for people who look at me, if someone looks at me for like 5 minutes and they can tell how fidgety I am because I'm extremely fidgety, they'll probably realize that that's either a natural fidgety or this kid has autism or ADHD or something. And I'm always fidgety. I'm actually fidgeting with my hands behind my back right now as I'm doing this interview.
Yes, you are. And that's okay. That's actually a nervous reaction. And people who do not have autism and people who are not, or who do not have ADHD or anxiety or anything will do that when they're being interviewed or when they're a little bit nervous. That's actually a normal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you realize that?
No, but I'm also pretty fidgety at the most random moments. Like sometimes when I'm just laying down in bed trying to get to sleep, I suddenly start fidgeting with my stuffed animals.
Mommy does that too. She gets fidgety when she's trying to lay down too. Her legs want to just jump and kick. And she has a hard time settling down. Are you surprised to hear some of these things that you think are different are kind of normal?
Not exactly, no.
All right. Well, for the past 13 months, there has been a massive worldwide pandemic going on. How has it affected you, both positively and negatively?
So I'm gonna try to start off with the positives, but there isn't many positives I can give it. Because of the lockdown and us not being able to do so many things during the summer, the things I could do in spring and late spring, early summer, the things I could do allow me to do several things that I couldn't do before, which was ride a bike and swimming. I'm still trying to get the hang of those things. The reason why I couldn't ride a bike though was because we don't have enough time to take me on bike rides often, and whenever we do have that time when we're in the middle of practicing riding my bike, 9 times out of 10 a tire goes flat and we have to take it to the garage before expected. And the reason why with swimming, it's just because I'm not a very good swimmer in general. Neither was any of my parents, I don't think. I mean, they could swim perfectly fine later, but then when they were my age, I don't think they could swim that well.
He's looking at me. He's like, "Is that right? I could swim fine in a pool."
Yeah, Mommy is not big on swimming in the ocean because Mommy's got knocked down by waves. But in a pool, Mommy's alright at swimming.
In a pool, I can swim perfectly fine at like shallow enough things to where it's safe for me, but deep if I go under so that I'm not barricaded under, but deep enough to where if I go under, I'm not immediately touching the bottom.
Yeah. So another question, is there anything else good that came out of this pandemic? Did you get to spend more time with somebody that you love?
Yeah.
That you wouldn't get to see much if you were in school?
Yeah.
Who's that?
My grandparents.
Okay, I was thinking of someone else.
And also my mom as well.
Okay. Yeah, you did get to see me a lot more because you were doing school at home, right? And during the day when I was home rather than being home at night when I'm at work, huh? Yeah. So that was kind of a good thing. We got to spend more time together. How did it affect you negatively? How did the pandemic affect you negatively, bud?
Negatively, a lot of things. For Christmas, it affected me so badly that all I really wanted was a bunch of NASCAR video games.
And I think that would have been the case no matter what.
Yeah. Probably, but it affected me so badly. It also affected me bad enough to where by January I wasn't even by January of 2021 I wasn't even sure if any of my interests were even really interests or not, or if they were just decoys and ruins of my real interests.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
How else has it affected you? Has it made you scared or stressed out?
It's made me a lot more scared. It's also made me like to watch the whodunits a lot more to try and get over that scaredness. And it's also managed to get several things that I didn't want it to happen. Like it managed to be as soon as my mommy heard anybody cough, she'd suddenly get into checking in and trying to see who it was that coughed because of this pandemic for some reason, which sometimes I think is unnecessary because everyone coughs, so you don't really need to try and check in as soon as anyone coughs.
To be fair, that got really bad after Mommy had COVID and she was worried about it passing on to any one of us.
Yeah.
It's not like she just, it's like, oh, there's a pandemic, you coughed, get out of here, she didn't do that.
I thought about it.
And there was also one night where I was listening to one of my podcasts to go to sleep, and a Harry Potter podcast, and one of the kids coughed on there was about a father sharing a story he liked with his young son, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, I think it was. And the kid ended up coughing, and right as my mom got home, and my mom was like, "What? Who coughed, huh?"
Who's coughing? Check their temperature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's both a negative and a positive, so I'll give it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Daddy. I'll let you wrap up the interview.
All right, buddy, thank you. You've been wanting to get back on this podcast for some time. You've asked us several times, and this will wrap up our Autism Acceptance Month of series of podcasts here. So this is the last one for the month of April. You will be able to hear this on your favorite podcatcher. We are also uploading our podcast to YouTube, so it'll be up on there at some point as well. And you can find this on our website, withmywifepod.com. We have our email, caregiverchroniclespod@gmail.com. And we'll be back next week with another Caregiver Chronicles.
We'll see you next week.
And also, Racing with Remy had updated merch, but we'll see you next week. Bye!
Shameless plug.